Hello, this video is part of the EDR Legal Framework series. In this video, I'm going to try and explain a bit about self-defense and the prevention of crime and how this relates to adults working with children and young people. I'll start with the disclaimer. I'm a teacher, not a lawyer. This is my interpretation of current UK legislation and guidance as it applies to adults working with children and young people. Okay, let's start with self-defense. When we talk about self-defense, we are talking about defense of the person. Defense of the person comes under common law. It means that it's legal for a person to do anything that is reasonable to protect themselves from injury. When it comes to prevention of crime, the 1967 Criminal Law Act says that a person may use such force as is reasonable in the circumstances in the prevention of crime, or in effecting or assisting in the lawful arrest of offenders or suspected offenders, or of persons unlawfully at large. Well, another legal term to understand is the rule of law. This means that no one is above the law and all laws apply equally to everyone, everywhere. So, for example, the speed limit on a motorway is 70 miles per hour, regardless of who you are or what car you drive. This means that regardless of what a school's behaviour policy says, every adult in school has the right to defend themselves when faced with violence and aggression. And I believe that staff have a right to know that, especially where staff are working with children and young people who display challenging violence and aggression. Secondly, the age of criminal responsibility in England and Wales is 10. It's 8 in Scotland. Violence and aggression, damage to property, possession of drugs, stealing, the list goes on, are all crimes as long as the child is 10 or over, or 8 in Scotland. Under the rule of law, this applies in schools. We are not working in a bubble exempt from the principles of law. These principles provide the legal basis for guidance like searching and screening, the use of force, and they underpin schools' behaviour policies. Having an understanding of these principles helps leaders to write policies and staff to respond to risk with more confidence. And teams that are confident tend to make better, safer decisions. Not exactly. The key term is reasonable. The law on self-defense allows you to do what is reasonable to defend yourself. The best way to think about what is reasonable is to think of it as a sum. Reasonable equals proportionate plus necessary. What is proportionate is down to assessing whether the amount of harm you were at risk of receiving was in proportion to the amount of harm you dished out. What is necessary refers to whether there was anything else safer and less harmful that could have been done instead. These are the same principles that allow armed officers to legally shoot suspected suicide bombers. There's a whole video on what reasonable means if you want further guidance, and you can find that in the legal framework section of the website. I think the most important takeaway is that the laws of the land apply to everyone in school, and schools have the backing of the law to implement policies and practices that keep people and property safe.